In 2017, a study conducted in Germany found that in just 27 years, the flying insect biomass had decreased by over 70%. Insects across the world were dying off and nobody knew it was happening. But why are insects so important? Sure, there are some that are necessary for life on this planet, like bees or even butterflies, but there are a lot more that aren't. The only job of a fly or a mosquito is to survive long enough to reproduce. So why should we care? Well, it all comes down to ecosystems. As implied by the name, an ecosystem is a system where every part of it has a specific role, meaning that one thing affects everything else. A good example is how Apple's products make up the Apple ecosystem. The iPhone and the AirPods work separately, but without one, the other loses value, and the same link exists to every insect, animal, and plant on Earth. Flies, for example, are able to reproduce in such large quantities that one of their main roles in nature is to feed birds and spiders. Maggots are larvae of flies, and as disgusting as they are, without them, a dead deer or a rotten fruit would take twice as long to decompose. Therefore, if insects disappeared, it would be catastrophic for everything else within Earth's ecosystem, including us. So, why are bug populations drastically declining? I mean, human activity is not ideal for the planet, but we aren't purposely targeting insects. Well, and that's the thing. It isn't just one bad practice, like using fossil fuels. It's all of it combined, which is causing Earth's sixth mass extinction event. The first and obvious one is pesticides. Many of us don't really think about them because there's no reason to. When you get to the store and pick a perfect red apple, you aren't thinking about why it hasn't been eaten by worms yet. You simply go home and eat it. But to get that apple to you unharmed, it is sprayed with very serious chemicals from when it was still on the tree. It might seem like nothing, but that tree and the land it grows on is where insects and other animals could otherwise live. But now, not only is that land gone, the chemicals we use to sterilize it can leach into the surrounding environment. A 2025 study that looked at data all across the world concluded that pesticides are harmful to non-target organisms, meaning that even if you spray crops for weevils, what you end up doing is harming everything else in the environment. So that's one of the reasons for this bug apocalypse. But as I said, it's not the only one. I always thought that light pollution was only bad because it obstructed the view of the stars. But as it turns out, it is also quite deadly to insects. Artificial light is already a massive problem for us humans. It tells our brains that despite the sun having set, it is still daytime. Screens and indoor lights that emit even a little bit of blue light, the ones that your brain uses to tell night and day apart, are messing up the circadian rhythms of almost every human on Earth. Thankfully, we have the conscious capacity to look at the clock and decide when it's time to go to bed. We understand that a light bulb is very different from a sun, but unfortunately, a fly cannot. You have to remember that bugs evolved in a world without light bulbs or even fire. Where humans have the ability to acknowledge and fight our primitive instincts, a bug cannot. When it sees a light, it will go to that light, even if that could mean death. And while this disruption is not necessarily lethal to insects, it destroys their ability to navigate and reproduce. Imagine you're heading home and you are suddenly hypnotized and forced to go to another city. That's basically what is happening with every bug that is attracted to artificial light sources. And going back to agriculture, it's not just pesticides that are harming bugs. Crop fields, cities, and urban areas take up an enormous amount of space that could otherwise house hundreds of insect species. This means that where there used to be a pond or a meadow, there is a tractor tilling dirt and then spraying it with toxic chemicals, or a coal plant emitting toxic gases miles into the surrounding environment. Because since the 1960s, humans have altered roughly a third of Earth's landmass. The study doesn't account for farmland only, but for all areas that have been significantly changed by human activity. So when you have that much land being taken away from insects and literally everything else that lives on this planet, except humans, it's only logical that there will be a massive decline in those populations. And the good news is that there are solutions to this. One of the most ingenious and also controversial ones being genetically modified organisms, also known as GMOs. Many people dislike or even despise them because a genetically modified product came from a lab and not through natural evolution. But because you can modify its genome and basically craft the perfect plant, that has allowed scientists to create crops that don't require as many or any pesticides to grow. It isn't a perfect step forward, but an advancement in GMO technology can mean a lot less pesticide use. And one technology that you might not have thought could help this problem is nuclear power. Yes, the same nuclear power that is responsible for atomic bombs in Chernobyl is what could help save insects and perhaps even humans. Because throughout this video I have omitted one glaring fact. Climate change, the boogeyman that haunts every topic about the environment. You see, climate change isn't just about rising sea levels or the summers getting a bit hotter, it's about how the climate behaves. So everything from temperature fluctuations to the frequency of weather phenomena. Bugs rely on the environment to survive, so when the environment becomes unreliable, that makes them more likely to die. Nuclear power allows us to generate as much energy as we need without pouring tons of harmful gases and chemicals into the environment. Sure, it might have left a pretty nasty footprint in human history, but if you look at the casualties caused by coal plants, for example, and compare them to nuclear, what you will find is that nuclear is far safer. Chernobyl, for example, only happened because the Soviet government was cheap. They purposely cut corners and lied about any flaws that the reactor might have had. Also, not to mention that this happened in the 80s, when nuclear technology was still very new. Reactors back then didn't have even half of the safety systems and technology they have now. So, in my opinion, the way to stop climate change and the insect apocalypse is with nuclear technology. Because the only byproduct of nuclear power is nuclear waste. And yes, it's not a great thing to have to deal with, but we are managing it far better than we manage waste from other energy sources. Not to mention that there's a possible way to use nuclear waste as an energy source in of itself. It's still theoretical and might be hokum at that, but it's far better than any other solution we have had for reducing carbon emissions. So what will the future look like for us and the bugs? Well, it's hard to say, because we live in an ever-changing world, where one day people are fighting for one thing and the next day for the other. Predicting what will happen 50 years from now is basically impossible, especially with technologies on the horizon like AGI, which could revolutionize fields like biology and agriculture. But if you had to guess, I would say the future of insects is looking hopeful. Not because the trends are, but because everyone is becoming aware of this problem. And this is very crucial, because you just have to look at any other issue in history to realize that when a global threat like this is at the center of human focus, it can be solved pretty quickly and effectively. For example, in the 20th century, we started producing a lot of ozone-depleting substances. These were chemicals used in the manufacturing of goods that we had no idea were dangerous until Earth's ozone layer, the part that blocks out UV radiation, was disappearing. When we realized this was happening and the consequences it would eventually lead to, the whole world came together and banned the use of these ozone-depleting chemicals. It was such a big deal that people still talk about it to this day. Just a few years ago, the film Finch was released, which explores the scenario we prevented. So when people like Jeremy Clarkson, who are perhaps the biggest voices in the world, start talking about this issue, I take it as a very good sign, because it is already Earth's 6th extinction event. The question is, will we be one of the extinct? And this is a queer situation that we are in, because I myself really despise insects. Yet here I am making a video about why we need to do everything possible to save them, because this is a situation that precedes personal biases or inconveniences like mosquito bites. Sure, my leg is currently itching like hell, but I would rather have an itchy leg than Soylent Green. For those of you who don't know, Soylent Green is the primary food in the 1970s film Soylent Green, which is supposed to be made from plankton, but in reality is made from human remains. But to my point, there are a lot of initiatives that aim to eradicate mosquitoes, for example. By releasing sterile males into the environment, this would eventually lead to the extinction of the whole species. And while I think it is something we should do in a place like Africa, where mosquitoes transmit malaria, globally eradicating them would mean a heavy blow to the ecosystem. And yes, many ecosystems can recover the loss of one species, but in a world where all insects are dying off, accelerating that process by deliberately targeting even one of them would help nobody. Obviously, bees are what we need to be focusing on, but without an ecosystem, there are no bees either. Also, I am not an expert in any of these fields, and my opinions are formed solely through my own independent research. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you think about the insect apocalypse, or maybe I totally missed something. In any case, check out the channel for more in-depth videos like this. Live long and prosper.